My parents said no kids were allowed at the Christmas party, including my son. But when I got to their house, my sister's 3 kids were there. They told me, these kids deserve to be here. So I told them I was cutting off my support. Can you believe your own family would scheme to steal from you, all while treating your child like dirt? I thought I knew what betrayal felt like, but nothing prepared me for the Christmas Eve bombshell that ripped my family apart. Here I am, Dakota, a widow at 34, sitting at my kitchen table at 7 a.m., trying to get my 7-year-old son, Tommy, ready for school while fighting back tears. It's been months since the accident at the construction site took Mark from us, but sometimes it feels like yesterday. The first few months after Mark's death were a blur of paperwork, tears, and sleepless nights. Honestly, I don't know how I would have made it through without Sarah and Jim, my in-laws. They've been absolute angels, picking Tommy up from school every day so I can focus on work. I stop by their place afterward to get him, and every single time, they try to give me money. Sarah, really, I can't take this, I said last week, pushing back the envelope she tried to slip into my purse. Dakota, sweetie, we want to help, she insisted, her kind eyes meeting mine. We know the insurance company paid well, but your family. Let us do this. She's right about the insurance. The company paid out $300,000 after Mark's death. Between that and my job as a marketing manager, we're doing okay financially. But it's not about the money with Sarah and Jim, it's about the love they show us every day. If only my own parents were half as supportive. Mom and Dad have always made it clear that my older sister, Rachel, was their golden child, and now they extend that same favoritism to her kids over Tommy. Last weekend was typical. Tommy was excited to see his grandparents, but within 20 minutes, Mom was complaining about his questions. Why does the clock make that sound? Tommy asked, pointing to their antique grandfather clock. How does it work inside? Mom sighed, rolling her eyes. Dakota, can't you control him? He's always asking questions about everything. Rachel's kids never give us this much trouble. Dad nodded in agreement, reaching for his laptop. Here, Tommy, why don't you play some games instead? Look, I downloaded some new ones. But Tommy didn't want games. He wanted to talk, to learn, to connect. Meanwhile, Rachel's 3 kids sat in the corner, completely absorbed in their phones, barely acknowledging anyone's presence. And my parents held this up as the ideal behavior. I've learned to bite my tongue. Growing up as the less favored child, I got used to these comparisons long ago. Now, I just shake my head and stay silent when they praise Rachel's parenting while criticizing mine. At least they do help occasionally with Tommy, watching him when I have late meetings or picking him up if both Sarah and Jim are busy. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday dinner at my parents' house. The warning signs were there from the moment I walked in. Mom had made my favorite lasagna, which she usually only does when she wants something. Dad was unusually chatty, asking about work, about Tommy, about everything, really. They were building up to something, I just didn't know what. So, Dakota, Mom said carefully, cutting her lasagna into perfect squares. We've been meaning to ask you something. How much was Mark's life insurance payout? The question hit me like a slap in the face. I nearly choked on my water, completely blindsided by such a direct inquiry about something so personal. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe I was just tired of keeping secrets from my parents, but I answered honestly. About $300,000, I said quietly. The fork in Mom's hand clattered against her plate. Dad's head snapped up so fast I thought he might hurt himself. They stared at me like I just announced I'd won the lottery. Well, Mom said, putting down her fork deliberately, what are you planning to do with all that money? I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I've invested it, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. It's for Tommy's future. His college education, maybe help him buy an apartment when he's older. Mark and I always talked about, but that's years away. Dad interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. You should be thinking about the present, Dakota. About yourself and your family. The way he said family made it clear he wasn't talking about Tommy. I knew that tone. It was the same one they used when they'd helped Rachel with her down payment on her house, or when they'd funded her lavish wedding. You could do so much with that money now, Mom chimed in, leaning forward eagerly. You could help your family, people who need it today, not save it all for some distant future that might not even. I'm not discussing my money anymore. I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. The silence that followed was deafening. They both sat back, Dad's face clouding over with that familiar disappointment I'd seen so many times growing up. Mom pressed her lips together in that thin line that always meant trouble. The rest of the dinner passed in intense silence, broken only by the scraping of forks against plates. I thought that would be the end of it. Knowing my parents, I expected them to give me the silent treatment for at least a month. It's what they always did when I didn't live up to their expectations. But to my surprise, Mom called just a week later. We're having a family dinner on Sunday, she announced, her voice warm, as if nothing had happened. Rachel and the kids will be there too. You have to come, sweetie. Something about her tone made me uneasy, but I agreed. When I arrived that Sunday, Rachel was already there with her kids, all of them glued to their phones as usual. As we sat down to eat, she started talking about rising prices, bills piling up, and how hard it was to make ends meet these days. Everything is just so expensive now, she sighed, passing the potatoes. Your father and I barely have enough for a normal life anymore. As Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, talking about rising grocery prices and utility bills, Rachel cleared her throat and sat up straighter. I've been thinking, she announced, looking around the table with that same self-righteous expression she'd worn since we were kids. Dakota and I should help Mom and Dad financially. I'll send them $500 every month. I wish I could do more, but you know how it is. Jack's the only one working and with kids. She trailed off, letting that sink in before turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But you, Dakota, you should send them $1,000 monthly. Excuse me. I nearly choked on my water. Well, it makes sense, Rachel pressed on. You earn really well at your job, and you only have one child to support. Plus, with your situation, you have other income now. My blood boiled at her careful avoidance of mentioning Mark's death directly. I wanted to scream that I was a widow, that I didn't have a husband's income to rely on anymore, that the other income she was referring to was meant for my son's future. But Mom was already clapping her hands in delight, and Dad was beaming like it was Christmas morning. Oh, girls, Mom exclaimed. You don't know what this means to us. I sat there, torn between anger and disbelief, watching my family's expectant faces. The words of refusal died in my throat. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn their approval, and here they were, putting a price tag on it. Fine, I heard myself say. I'll do it. The first transfer hurt the most. $1,000 gone with a few clicks. I told myself it was worth it if it meant more family support with Tommy. But that fantasy quickly unraveled. Mom, could you pick Tommy up from school today? Sarah has a doctor's appointment, and I have a late meeting. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry, Mom's voice crackled through the phone. I've got such a headache today. You know how my migraines get. This became a pattern. Every time I needed help with Tommy, there was an excuse. Mom was too busy. She was tired. She had errands to run. Her back was acting up. Meanwhile, the $1,000 left my account like clockwork every month. One particularly frustrating Thursday, after Mom claimed she couldn't watch Tommy because she might be coming down with something, I called Sarah in desperation. Of course we'll pick him up, Sarah said without hesitation. Jim's already heading to the school. He loves their little chats on the drive home. Tommy's been telling him all about their science project. I hung up the phone and sat at my desk, fighting back tears. $1,000 a month bought me nothing but excuses from my own mother, while my mother-in-law dropped everything to help without asking for a penny. December crept up on me that year. We'd always spent Christmas at my parents' house. It was tradition. The whole family gathered there, exchanging gifts, sharing a meal, making memories. The call came exactly a week before Christmas. I was helping Tommy with his homework when my phone lit up with Mom's number. Dakota, honey, she started, using that syrupy sweet tone that always preceded bad news, about Christmas Eve. We've decided to do something different this year. We're having an adults-only party. No children allowed. The pencil I was holding snapped in my hand. What? It's just that we want to do something more sophisticated this year, Mom continued, as if she was discussing something as trivial as choosing dinner plans. You know, wine, adult conversation. But it's Christmas. I protested, moving away so Tommy couldn't hear. What am I supposed to do with Tommy? Oh, that's easy, she replied, her voice light and dismissive. You can leave him with Sarah and Jim. They'd love to have him, I'm sure. You'll come by around 7. After hanging up, I stared at Tommy, who was still working on his math problems, completely unaware that his grandmother had just uninvited him from Christmas. My heart ached watching him concentrate on his multiplication tables, his tongue sticking out just like Mark used to. I spent the next week debating what to do. The thought of celebrating without Tommy felt wrong, but skipping the family Christmas entirely seemed too dramatic. Finally, I came up with a compromise. I'd leave Tommy with Sarah and Jim for a few hours, make an appearance at my parents' house to exchange gifts and greetings, then head back to celebrate properly with my in-laws and son. On Christmas Eve, I pulled up to my parents' house alone, a bag of carefully wrapped presents in hand. The driveway was full of cars, more than usual for our family gatherings. Walking up to the front door, I could hear laughter and Christmas music spilling out into the cold December air. I opened the door, and the world seemed to tilt sideways. The house was packed with relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins. But that wasn't what stopped me in my tracks. There, running through the living room with paper crowns on their heads, were Rachel's 3 kids. And near the Christmas tree, I spotted my cousin Linda's children helping themselves to cookies. More kids appeared in my line of sight, my cousin Mark's twins, my cousin Susan's teenager. The room suddenly felt too hot, too tight. I stood in the doorway, the gift bag hanging limply from my hand, as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't an adults-only party at all. It was a party where only my son wasn't welcome. I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind struggling to process the scene before me. My Aunt Marie was the first to spot me. "Dakota, sweetheart." She rushed over to hug me, then looked around expectantly. "Where's little Tommy? Don't tell me he's sick on Christmas Eve." Before I could answer, my cousin Peter chimed in, "Yeah, where's our favorite little scientist? Jake's been wanting to show him his new chemistry set." More relatives gathered around, all asking the same question: where was Tommy? Why had I come alone? Each inquiry felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't form words, couldn't explain what I didn't understand myself. Through the crowd, I spotted my mother in the kitchen, arranging cookies on a Christmas-themed platter as if everything was perfectly normal, as if she hadn't just excluded her own only grandson from a family celebration. "Excuse me," I managed to say, pushing past my concerned relatives. My feet carried me to the kitchen on autopilot, anger building with each step. "Mom," I said, my voice low and controlled, "can we talk privately?" Something in my tone made her put down the platter. I led her into the hallway, away from prying eyes and ears. "You told me this was an adults-only party," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You specifically told me not to bring Tommy. So why are Rachel's kids here? Why are all the cousins' children here?" Mom straightened her Christmas sweater, not meeting my eyes. "Well, that's different." "Different how?" "Those children," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the living room, "know how to behave at formal gatherings. They're well-mannered." I stared at her in disbelief. "Well-mannered? Tommy is one of the most polite children I know. His teachers praise his behavior constantly. Sarah and Jim always say, 'Oh, Sarah and Jim.'" Mom interrupted, rolling her eyes. "They spoil him, encourage all those endless questions. The other children, they deserve to be here more. They know their place." As if on cue, a commotion erupted from the dining room. Rachel's youngest son, Kevin, had grabbed a handful of deviled eggs and was throwing them at his sister. The eggs sailed across the room, splattering against Emily's new Christmas dress as she shrieked. I turned back to my mother, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, I can clearly see their superior manners on display." Mom's face hardened. "That's just children being children. But when Tommy asks questions about how things work, that's unacceptable behavior. Don't be so dramatic, Dakota. He's fine with Sarah and Jim." "I'm leaving," I announced, turning toward the door. "I'm going back to my son." Mom shrugged, examining her manicure. "Fine, leave if you want to make a scene. But put your gifts under the tree first. We're opening them after dinner." Something snapped inside me as I stood there watching my mother's dismissive shrug. Before I could second-guess myself, I walked into the center of the living room. I cleared my throat loudly, the sound cutting through the holiday music and chatter. Heads turned, conversations died mid-sentence, and suddenly, all eyes were on me. "Several of you have asked why I came alone tonight," I began, my voice stronger than I expected. "Why Tommy isn't here celebrating Christmas with his family." Rachel started to move toward me, but I held up my hand. "Let me finish. I'm here alone because a week ago, Mom called and told me this was an adults-only party. I was specifically told not to bring Tommy." "What?" Aunt Marie's voice cut through the silence. "But all the children are here. We didn't know anything about a ban on children." Uncle Steve added, looking confused. Mom stepped forward, her face flushed. "Dakota, this isn't the time." "Oh, I think this is exactly the time," I continued, my voice rising slightly. "Because you see, there wasn't really a ban on children. There was a ban on one child. My child. My son, who apparently isn't good enough for this family's Christmas celebration." The room erupted in murmurs. I saw shocked faces, disapproving looks directed at my parents, and confused children watching the adult drama unfold. "But that's not even the best part," I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "While my son isn't good enough to attend Christmas, I'm apparently good enough to send my parents $1,000 every month. And Rachel here, she sends $500. Rachel's husband, Jack's head snapped up. "Wait, what? What $500? You're sending your parents money every month? From where? Our account barely covers the bills as it is." Rachel's composure cracked, her face flushed red as she looked between our parents and her husband. "I never actually sent any money," she stammered. "Mom and Dad asked me to say I was sending $500 so Dakota would agree to help them financially. They said if she thought I was contributing to." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched comprehension dawn on my relatives' faces as they pieced together what had happened, how my parents and sister had manipulated me into supporting them while simultaneously excluding my child from family events. "You're telling me," Aunt Caroline's voice rang out, sharp and clear, "that you scammed your own daughter out of thousands of dollars? You're nothing but scammers, using your own daughter like an ATM while treating her kid like dirt. That's low, even for you two." The room erupted in overlapping voices, some expressing disgust, others demanding explanations. Rachel was trying to explain herself to an increasingly angry Jack, while my parents stood there, their carefully crafted facade crumbling around them. I raised my hand, silencing the ongoing arguments around me. I have something else to say. The room fell quiet again, all eyes returning to me. Mom and Dad stood frozen by the Christmas tree, their faces ashen. Rachel was still trying to explain herself to Jack, but even they stopped to listen. From this moment on, I said, my voice steady and clear, I will no longer be sending you any money. And I won't be maintaining any relationship with you or Rachel. I'm done. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out, leaving the bag of gifts by the door. The sound of the door closing behind me felt final, like the ending of a chapter one should have finished long ago. Sitting in my car, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. With a few quick taps, I canceled the monthly transfer to my mother's account. It felt like cutting off a chain I'd been dragging behind me for months. The drive to Sarah and Jim's house seemed to take both forever and no time at all. When I pulled into their driveway, I could see Tommy through the window helping Sarah decorate Christmas cookies. The sight of him, happy and loved, brought tears to my eyes. We spent the rest of Christmas Eve with Sarah and Jim, decorating cookies, singing carols, and watching Tommy's eyes light up as he helped Jim arrange the nativity scene. This, I realized, was what family should feel like. The next morning, while Tommy was still asleep, surrounded by the presents Santa had brought, my phone rang. It was Aunt Caroline. You might want to hear how things ended last night, she said without preamble. After you left, it was like a dam broke. Uncle Mike stood up and said he couldn't stay in the house another minute. Then Aunt Marie and Uncle Steve followed. Pretty soon, everyone was gathering their coats and kids. I listened as she described how the relatives had left en masse, not even bothering to say goodbye to my parents. Some had apparently made very loud comments about manipulative behavior and family shame as they walked out. And Jack? I asked quietly. Oh, honey, he was livid. Packed up the kids right there and then, told Rachel he needed time to think about their marriage. Said he was taking the children to his parents' house for Christmas. Rachel was crying. Your parents were trying to damage control, but it was too late. I could hear her take a deep breath. I want you to know, Dakota, we're all on your side. What they did to you and Tommy, it's unforgivable. After hanging up, I sat on my bed, processing everything. My phone started buzzing with notifications, text messages from Mom, Dad, and Rachel. They all said variations of the same thing. We're sorry, we were wrong, please talk to us, we can explain. I read each message once, then archived them without responding. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a peaceful blur. Tommy and I spent quiet evenings with Sarah and Jim, played board games, watched holiday movies, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of being with people who truly loved us both. Then, on New Year's Eve morning, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mom and Dad standing on my porch, clutching a large, elaborately wrapped package. My heart thumped against my ribs as I debated whether to open the door. Dakota, we know you're home. Mom called out, her voice muffled through the door. Please, we just want to talk. After a moment's hesitation, I opened the door but stayed firmly in the doorway, blocking their entrance. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had a week ago. We brought this for Tommy, Dad said, holding out the package. Through the wrapping paper, I could see the logo of an expensive electronics store. He doesn't need it, I replied, making no move to take the gift. Please, Dakota, Mom stepped forward, we know we were wrong. The way we treated Tommy, the manipulation with the money, we're truly sorry. And we want you to know, Dad added quickly, that this isn't about the money you were sending us. We really do feel terrible about everything. I studied their faces, searching for sincerity. Are you sorry because you realize what you did was wrong, or are you sorry because the entire family knows what you did and won't speak to you anymore? They exchanged glances, and in that brief look, I had my answer. I think you should leave, I said quietly. I don't believe you and I don't trust you. Not anymore. But we're family. Mom protested, tears welling up in her eyes. No, I shook my head. Family doesn't manipulate each other. Family doesn't exclude a child from Christmas. Family doesn't scheme and lie to get money. What you did, that's not family. They left eventually, still clutching the unwanted gift, their apologies trailing behind them as they walked to their car. I watched them drive away, feeling not sadness, but relief. In the months that followed, I stuck to my decision. I didn't answer their calls or respond to their texts. Rachel tried reaching out too, but I blocked her number. The money I had been sending to my parents went into Tommy's college fund instead. The funny thing about cutting toxic people out of your life is how much room it makes for better relationships to grow. Aunt Caroline started inviting us over for Sunday dinners. Uncle Mike and his wife had us over for barbecues where Tommy could play with his cousins. Everyone made a point of including him, asking about his interests, encouraging his questions. Mom, why does Uncle Mike's pool have that funny smell? Tommy asked one summer afternoon. That's the chlorine, buddy, Uncle Mike answered before I could, launching into an explanation about water treatment and chemical reactions that had Tommy fascinated. I watched my son bloom under the attention and love of family members who actually wanted to know him, not change him. He started calling Sarah and Jim Grandma and Grandpa exclusively now, and they continue to be our rocks, our safe harbor in any storm.